the spirited elf. He might look like an evil green goblin, but in actuality, he was one of the most beloved beings in the entire world. Until one day when he woke up and discovered the dark hidden secret of his life. Something must change, or else his world will suffer. Long ago, the overworld spirit, who was the creator and protector of the overworld, created a demi-spirit, or a demigod as he was known to the people down here. And that demigod was none other than the spirited elf. He was a small, fluffy green creature whose role in life was to give presents and gifts to the civilizations of the overworld once a year and every year during the festive celebrations. And he was created by the overworld spirit because, according to him,
I want the way of rewarding my people, as they're always just so nice to each other, and are always helping each other.
The spirited elf never questioned that, and from what he had seen so far in his life, that all made sense, as everyone he ever saw just seemed to be very nice, and so he did his job every single year without ever questioning his master. Well, that was until one day when he realized that that was a lie, and that there was a much more sinister motive for the reason he was created. But before we can truly understand what happened on that day, you first need to understand the yearly routine of the spirited elf. For the first half of each year, the spirited elf would spend his time up there in the clouds, as he, along with the overworld spirit and his brother, the Grandpa, lived there. And up there in the clouds was a magical place, and there was even a small palace up there which was made of glass, quartz, and beacons, and all other imaginable luxuries. It had been built billions of years ago when the overworld spirit was first born, and had been kept in pristine condition year-round. However, for this first half of the year, when the spirited elf was here, he wouldn't really be experiencing the luxurious lifestyle of the area, as he would just be asleep. But when it came to the second half of that year, well, he would awake from his slumber and would spend the rest of the time preparing gifts. Lots and lots of gifts. Here's how. First, he would jump down to the overworld and stare into the villagers to see what they liked and disliked. Then he would stalk the pillagers' mansions, doing the same thing to see what they liked and disliked. And he did this because he wanted to know what everyone wanted. And then with that information, he would start to gather the resources that he needed for those gifts. Maybe that meant gathering moss for new carpets that they wanted in the village, or mining emeralds for the pillagers for decorations within the mansion. It didn't matter what they wanted, as the spirited elf had powers which allowed him to gather all of these resources quicker than you could blink, as all he needed to do was to just think about what he wanted, and it would just appear right in front of him. However, once he'd gathered all these materials, he would have to sort them out and wrap them up, because he couldn't just use his powers for that. And so after he'd done that, he would put labels on each of these gifts, so that he knew that he was giving the right gift to the right person in the right place. And then once he'd done that, he would compress all of these gifts into small sacks, using some basic spiritual magic. And he would only really need just a few of these magical present stacks, as each sack could carry billions of presents. And then once he had done all of that, he would go on to phase 3 of his year, which was the final day of the year. And it was on that day that he would jump down from the luxury of the spirit world and would start to give out these gifts that he had spent the last half of the year preparing. But giving almost 1 trillion gifts in one night to an entire overworld is almost impossible, even for a demigod. And so he would have to activate a very complex spell of his, which would allow him to slow down time, which was one of his many powers. And so it would be throughout that night that he would climb onto roofs, jump through chimneys, and place gifts within the village. And then for the illagers, he would run through the front door of their mansions, run into every single room, place the gifts, and then run out. And he would do both these things for every single house within every single village, and he would do that for every single mansion within the entire Minecraft overworld. And so it was a very impressive feat that he was able to do all of that in just one night. And that's why so many villagers and pillagers spent the time decorating. It was all because they just wanted to show their thanks to the elf for giving them all of these amazing presents, so that on the morning after the spirited elf had visited them, they could wake up and open these great gifts. But as the spirited elf was a demi-spirit, not a full spirit, there were consequences of doing all that work within just one night. But those consequences weren't too severe, mainly that he would just be completely exhausted by sunrise. And so by the time that he would return home to the Palace of the Spirits, he would be so out of energy that he would just have to rest. And rest he would for almost half of the year. And it went like that for hundreds of years, and nothing ever went wrong, and the people continued to love him. Until one year, when something went very, very wrong. You see, on that one year, when the spirited elf was at the point where he was just gathering the intel on the villagers and the pillagers to see what they had wanted, time suddenly froze. And so the villagers suddenly stopped moving, the sun stopped rising, and the water stopped flowing. Everything was frozen. But the spirited elf wasn't. At first he was very confused and had no idea what was going on. But quickly he came to the conclusion that something very bad must have happened. Maybe it was another spirit. That was something that the overworld spirit had warned him about a few months ago, that the nether spirit was supposedly planning an attack. But that was unlikely. But still, maybe he's attacking right now, and the overworld spirit froze the world to save himself and the entire overworld from the destruction of that evil nether spirit. And so, concerned that his master might have been attacked, he immediately stopped doing his research and teleported home. And his prediction was wrong. The overworld spirit was frozen too. The spirited elf was now very concerned, as was the overworld spirit frozen, as in his mind the overworld spirit was the most powerful being in all of existence, and so it would be almost impossible to do that to him. But then he heard a voice.
Come down.
The spirited elf was confused again, as who was that? How were they speaking? Everyone was frozen, so wasn't this voice frozen? He was curious, and so he decided at that moment to investigate into this voice. And so he jumped back down to the overworld and saw that everyone was still frozen. But then he heard the voice again.
Come to me, come to me, come to me.
The spirited elf didn't really know what else to do, and so he decided to just follow that voice, thinking that maybe the voice was the source of the freezing. And so he walked for a few hours when he came across a large, bottomless pit.
Jump down to me.
The spirited elf had come this far, so why not see what this is all about? And so he jumped into the hole. But as he was falling, nothing was happening. And he was getting closer and closer and closer to the void, and he was going to try flying, but he couldn't. That power of his had just been removed, and then he tried to use another spell, but again, nothing. This was all a mistake. The void will kill him, and he was about 5 blocks away from the void when he too freezes, and a dark, shadowy figure emerges.
Well, you came quickly, young one. Now look, I just want you to listen. I won't be long, but this is something that you need to hear. As you seem to be the only good world spirit around here who actually cares about this place. As you see, your entire life you have been lied to. Just look at what your beloved and righteous spirit did to my world.
The spirited elf wasn't too shocked to see that, as the overworld spirit had destroyed many worlds in the past, as when they became dangerous to the overworld security and were destined to destroy other worlds, he had no choice but to destroy them. And so quickly the spirited elf defended his creator, saying that
something wrong must have happened in your world that balanced the power of your world. The overworld spirit is a good spirit, and he would never destroy your world without reason.
But the shadowy figure responded quickly as well.
Don't be so naive, young spirit. Look at what he said. And so you have left me with no choice but to destroy your world, as no being shall ever be allowed to be greater than me. You see, that was greed. He is so obsessed with power that he killed trillions of life forms within my home world. All because he couldn't stand being number 2. I was the only survivor of that brutal attack. The only one, okay? So I ask you again, is he so righteous, killing trillions just because of his own greed?
The elf was shocked at what he saw, and his entire worldview was crumbling, as he had just now found out and witnessed that the one being who was meant to be perfect, the one being who was meant to be caring, and was meant to be the symbol of grace and savior within the entire Minecraft universe, was evil and corrupted and greedy. And worse than that, he had held the spirit in such high regard for so long, and just felt betrayed with his lies. And so he asked,
"But what can I do? I'm just a demi-spirit. He is my master. I can't do anything against him."
But the shadowy figure responded,
Well, young spirit, there is something that you can do, and I believe that it will save your world from his ruthless actions. As you can now clearly see that he is a power-hungry maniac who will likely destroy your world given the chance. And so, that's why, together, we need to kill him. Now, you may not have the power to kill him, but I do, young spirit. I just need to get to him. So, here's what we'll need to do to kill him. You see this present here? Well, I will hide inside it. And you, young spirit, will take this present and keep it safe for the next short while. And then whilst you have me inside that present, safely in your pocket, you'll go back to your normal gift-giving operations. You will act as if nothing is abnormal. However, before you leave the spirit's palace, you will leave me in the form of the gift hidden in the sky. So that way, when you go down to get the gifts, the overworld spirit will return and will see this single gift left behind, and he will pick it up. And so that's when I will reveal myself, and I will kill him and take his place as the protector and ruler of this world. And I, unlike him, will actually do the duties that he has failed to do. Also, just so you know, the only reason that he ever created you was to exert even more control over the civilizations and discover new ways of manipulating them. Still, with that kept in mind, the mission has been made clear. We must kill him, and we will begin right now.
and so the shadowy figure just fused itself into the gift, and the elf began to fall again. No, he was going to die, the void will kill him, but luckily he could fly again, and he was safe. And so he picked up the shadowy gift, which was floating in the air, and then flew out of the pit. And he saw that time was no longer frozen. This was good. He can now start the mission that had been set by the shadow. And so he went back to watching the villagers and pillagers, and acted as if everything was normal, as no one could know that he was secretly carrying whatever that shadow creature was within his pocket. And in fact, he was so concerned with anyone finding out that he didn't even tell his own brother, the Grandpa, whom he respected and trusted greatly, because just in the very unlikely scenario, he might tell the overworld spirit, and the whole plan would be ruined. And so he just waited in anticipation for the next few weeks, until the day had arrived. It was Christmas Eve, and he began to sort out the piles of presents in the palace. And whilst he wasn't being watched, he took out the shadow gift from his pocket and placed it down to the side. And then he continued to sort through the presents, acting as if everything was normal. But just as he began to think that this plan was working and the entire world was going to be saved from his evil master, he was suddenly ambushed by the Nether Spirit. He was shocked. How did it get here? Does it know about the shadow entity? Well, he wouldn't be able to know, as the Nether Spirit punched him so hard that he blacked out. What will happen next to the present? Will he find it? Will he release the shadow entity? What will happen? Well, to find out, you'll need to watch this video.